John wakes up in bed the next day with a really bad headache and his ribs screaming at him. He tries to get up, but Rana pushes him down. Rana says, "Don't get up. That troll did a number on you." John looks up at her and says, "Did you carry me back?" Rihanna answers, "Yes. You don't look that heavy." John asks, "Did you make sure you weren't followed?" She responds, "No one can track an elf. Now hold still." Rana uses her abilities to heal John. He can feel himself healing, but only just slightly. "That's all I can do for now. It will take several more days before you are completely healed." John simply states, "No problem. Just get me back on my feet." As Rana said, it takes over a week before John is healed enough to walk around. Just as soon as he's on his feet, John is right back to work. Working through the pain, he's carrying all manner of items inside. All sorts of things are preserved and collected before the leaves begin to fall. Winter comes soon and begins to flurry. Rana is outside enjoying the winter that is coming. Rihanna looking around. "Isn't it wonderful? The peacefulness of the falling snow." John watches as Rana dances in the falling snow. She seems to be at peace in the moment. But that moment passes quickly when John notices something. Grabbing Rana, they duck behind some cover. They look as a large group of green monsters, cloaked figures, goblins, and even a few kobolds. He looks through some binoculars as the force that is passing. Then he sees something that surprises him. There are elves in that group. Most of them wearing cloaks to protect them from the winter cold, but a few have their hoods pulled back. John sees this and says, "What the fuck?" Rana says, "What is it?" John responds, "Your brethren are with them." Rana responds, "What?" Yanking the binoculars right out of his hand, she looks over at them and audibly gulps after a few seconds. She lowers the binoculars and looks at John. "I have a debt to you, so I will not reveal the location, but I have to go speak with them." John responds, "If it is your choice to join them, I'm not going to stop you." Rihanna thinks for nearly a minute, looking back and forth at the group and moving. She says, "I have to go. I have to settle things with them, but I won't tell them about this place." John steels himself and says, "I'll be here waiting for you." With a look, Rihanna is gone. She runs around the mountain to find the group still marching to their destination. Rihanna comes down and finds the other elves are grateful to have her along. They cover her with a cloak since she is in summer attire. The leader of the elves, Kegels, comes up and says, "Where have you been the last few months?" Rana, "After my team was killed, I decided to keep scouting and find out what I could." Kegels asks, "And what have you discovered?" Rana responds that the human forces are far more powerful than we have ever faced before. Their weapons are far-reaching and difficult, if not impossible, to stop. We found an army of goblins that were wiped out. Also, they had some high elves on their side. Kegels responds, "Are you sure?" Rihanna says, "Yes, though I'm not sure their numbers." Kegels asks, "What is the most dangerous?" Rihanna responds, "It's a moving cannon they call a tank. It can take an extreme amount of punishment and still keep firing at us. You can't simply stop it by blasting it with fire. Also, the vehicle they used to fly in. If they come at us with one of those, we have little chance." Kegels responds, "I understand. I will pass that around, thank you." As he goes and turns to the others, another female elf walks up to Rena and gives her a hug. "It's good to see you, sister." Rena hugs her back. "You too, Irony." "You look different," Irony says. Rihanna asks, "I do?" "Yes." Then she looks sideways at Rana. "Does he have a name?" Rihanna asks, "Does who?" "Oh, come on, Rana. We're sisters. I know when you're in love." You always assume too much, ran a response to that. Irony, and you have never been difficult to read. Now, who is he? Rihanna, what have I done in this time only is of a tactical nature? She stammers a little. Irony, all right, I'll bug you about it later. The march continues to the outskirts of the human stronghold. They look over the number at the walls that they will have to be breached. As alarms begin to be sounded, the forces outside the walls begin to give a battle cry and charge in. Massive cannons and catapults fire as soon as they are in position. The first wall is breached before anyone gets there. The second wall doesn't last much longer. Civilians scramble to find cover behind the third and final wall. That's when the machine guns begin to open up. This time, the monsters use firearms as well. It is like running into a firefight to the next wall. The wall itself is solid, but the doors break easily. Many rush in thinking it will be an easy way in. Then they find out that the entrance is covered by infantry. Fighting breaks down to a melee in hand-to-hand combat. It is pure chaos as the monsters flood the area. Many of the humans run for it. If they are fast enough, they reach the reinforcements before they are run down. Though mechanized, they are fought to a stalemate, and the monsters raid the area. They take everything they can. If they can't, they burn it. As the group withdraws, there is nothing left for the human survivors to go back to. Though there were no elves killed, Kegel still looks concerned at the outcome of the attack. Yes, they got what they came for, but at a high price. Rena helps her sister along. Irony hurt her leg during the attack, and as they walk back, Rena asks to be assigned to her former duties. Kegel asks, do you have some place that you must be? Rena, I'm only asking to leave the clan for a time. Kegel says, why do you ask this? Irony, I knew it. You did meet someone. Kegel is clearly upset. What? What? Irony, I can't. You can't tell? Our rigid Rena has fallen in love. Kegel, is this true? You wish to be with another than at my side? Irony, he must really be something. Rihanna, quiet, Irony. Kegel, I simply... Go then, he waved his hand. But know this. Once you leave, you may not be accepted back in the clan, and you will not be accepted by my side. He turns away, clearly disgusted at this prospect. Rihanna then looks at him as he walks away, then to her sister. I must follow my heart. Yelling back, then go, he says as he continues to walk. Rena hugs her sister and whispers to her, we will meet again. Irony is crying as Rena walks to the back of the group. She watches until another elf guides her back onto the trail. Rena uses every trick she knows to make sure she isn't followed. She moves almost silently to the door of John's house. Suddenly, the door opens, and John has a gun in Rihanna's face. Lowering the pistol, you're back! Come inside, quickly! Rihanna walks inside, and John closes and locks the door behind her. He prepares a bucket of hot water for her to clean up with. Rihanna takes off her gear and begins to wipe herself off. She has dirt and blood all over her. John notices but doesn't say anything about it. They only get a replacement bucket when the one she is using gets dirty. Rihanna is in full view of John, but he tries to keep his eyes in check and look away and clearly not stare. Almost slyly, she says, is something wrong? John responds, no. Well, why do you ask? Rihanna says, you seem distant. John gives her confused looks, but tries to lock his eyes on hers. I'm not sure what you mean. Rihanna, it must be nothing, though Do you think you could get my back for me? Hesitantly, John agrees and begins to clean Rihanna's beautiful body. It takes an extreme mental concentration for John to keep himself under control. Rihanna smiles because she can feel the struggle John is fighting within himself. While this is going on, Rihanna notices that the layout of the house has changed. The necessities have been brought in from the outer rooms, and the 2 rooms closest to the outside have blankets hanging from the walls. It is obvious that a lot of care was taken in planning for this winter. Candles have been stockpiled and in easy reach. The bed has been moved near the stove. All the wood has been stacked neatly, and any that cannot fit into the room were stored has been moved to the room just outside the door. By the look of things, they will not have to leave the house at all over the winter months. Rena is still a little cold from being out in the elements as she climbs into bed. She hangs her gear near the stove so it can dry. Then John moves to the chair that he collected and puts a blanket over himself, kicking off his boots as he tries to go to sleep. However, every time he opens his eyes, he sees the sleeping Rena and knows that underneath that blanket, there's nothing between her and the air. Next morning, Rena wakes up to John feeding the fire. She sits up a little and reaches out and touches John on the back. Rena, why do you never talk about your past? John retorts with, why don't you? Rena says, you might not like what you hear. John replies, oh, you have the same answer from me. John adjusts the flue and begins to prepare their breakfast. Rena enjoys the breakfast in bed, and John enjoys the view as Rihanna sat up. She is almost completely unaware that she is still undressed. It is actually warm enough that John is not even wearing a shirt. For a while, there is a little sound, except for the wind and snow beating on the side of the house. Rena shows John how to meditate and can sense a dormant ability deep inside him, though she keeps this secret until she can begin to bring it more to the surface. Most days are like this. They only leave for biological necessities, to use the outhouse. Other than that, there's no evidence of anyone is around. About 2 weeks of seclusion, and Rena begins to show signs of cabin fever. John pulls out a bathtub that he managed to salvage and begins to fill it with hot water. Rena asks, what are you doing? John says, getting things ready for you. What? She asks. Dumping the last of the hot water in the tub. I figured you like a bath, he says. He fills up more buckets and begins to heat them up. Rihanna slides into the tub and enjoys the hot water. It isn't more than 10 minutes before he can finish filling the tub. Rihanna seems to enjoy it, especially when John produces a bar of soap. John just sits in his chair and waits. Rihanna can once again feel John's inner torment as she shows her legs and bare back to him. Rihanna says, you need to clean up as well. Without looking at her, he says, I can wait. Rihanna says, come on in. I'll wash your back for you. John only thinks for another moment before he begins to undress. He slides into the tub and looks over at Rena. Their legs are intertwined due to the size of the tub. He turns and puts his hands over his face. That's when he realized that he could really use a shave. He reaches over and gets one of the knives. Rihanna watches as John's face is revealed to her. He is not the best looking man she has ever seen, but he is definitely not the worst. John also shortens his hair. It is still a bit long, but a lot cleaner. Rena sees this, reaches over, and touches John's face. She smiles and looks into his eyes. He raises his hand and caresses her face as well. As he brings his hand near her head, he brings his face forward. This is where they kiss for the first time. They continue, and when they pull back, John looks into Rena's eyes. It only takes a few more seconds for her to open hers, as she was enjoying the kiss. They both smile and kiss again. As Rihanna gets more into the sensation, God slides his arms under hers and lifts her out of the tub. Carefully, as the water drips on the floor, he brings her to the bed. He lays her down and looks deep into her eyes and simply asks, as she reaches her legs around his waist, "Are you sure?" Rihanna just smiles and pulls him down to her.